All right. Well, hello, everyone. This is podcast number 9 from the podcast series Front Office Success. I'm your host, Naveen Samuel. Today, we have a special guest with us. I'll be interviewing Jen Butler, the CEO and founder of JB Partners. She has worked in the area of SMART, and SMART is an acronym that stands for Stress Management and Resiliency Training. And she's worked in the various industries for 25 years. So I want to welcome to the program, Jen.
Thank you so much. It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, I know we played a lot of phone tag, a lot of different, we had missed times before, but I'm glad we made it. And
me too.
Yeah. So this is
tenaciousness always seems to work out in the best, right?
Yeah. And we're on a new platform. We're not using Blab for today. We're using Zoom, and it seems to be working out pretty well. Tell us a little bit about your background before you got started in the dental industry.
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. So my background is in education. It's a blending of educational psychology, public health administration, and then I actually have a double master's in education and then special education. And I learned very quickly on that me being in a classroom was not necessarily where my passion was. So it was very obvious. I was always wondering what's going on down the hall or outside. So I very quickly got into corporate training.
Okay.
And, but my first experience, to even back up a little bit, my first experience with working around stress management was actually in high school when I wrote my very first stress management course for my high school peers. And for some reason, I've just always have had an infinity or an infatuation, affinity for what causes people to stress out, what freaks them out, not just the mental snap that people go through regardless of age, but also the biology and the physiology behind it. So as I got into corporate training, I wrote a lot of stress management programs for corporate leaders, mid-level managers to front-facing employees. And regardless of the industry, and I've worked in a variety of industries, or the company that I worked for, there always was a very strong element of stress management. Now, SMART is a very common term in my industry, meaning stress management and resiliency training. And it really is an umbrella that encompasses several different topics. It can encompass leadership, communication, stress management, adapting, how someone allows to adapt to change, how resilient people are to manage or navigate situations. So there's, underneath that SMART umbrella, as I continued to work in different industries, I became more of a thought leader or geek, as I call myself, around such topics as team development and communication and leadership, because it all fell underneath this SMART umbrella. So sure. That's a little bit of my background. Well,
that's great. Can you tell us more specifically which industries you were in before you got into dentistry?
So I did work in public education. For school districts as well as Head Start. I was a director of special ed for Head Start in Minneapolis, which was it is the 4th largest Head Start program in the country. We had thousands of children. We had 8 schools, and I was the director of special ed there. And again, I focused a lot on stress management, working in special ed with parents and the kids and the teachers. And then I moved into more of a corporate industry, and I worked for Verizon Wireless, Flextronics, which is a multi-billion-dollar organization out of Singapore. People haven't heard necessarily of Flextronics, but they know who Flextronics serves, Kenmore, that type thing. Dell, Rogers, so cellular. And then coming into dentistry in 2011.
Okay. 2011, okay.
Yeah, so what's interesting though is also I was pre-med in college.
Okay.
And so I do have a diverse background. I was pre-med in college, and so to build my resume, I always wanted to be an ER doc. So to build my resume, I actually went through paramedic school. I was a certified nursing assistant. I drove an ambulance. I worked with doctors.
Wow.
I worked in multiple hospital settings, from ER to oncology to orthopedics. I drove an ambulance for the University of Minnesota. That's my alum. And so I've worked in healthcare for either as an employee or as a volunteer, again, since I was 8. I actually started working in healthcare in an institution, working in the physical therapy department in an institution in Indiana when institutions were around, serving people with special needs. So my experience in healthcare really helped me transfer into the field of dentistry very easily. I get the doctor brain and I can speak their language very quickly. And I found a home. I really love dentistry. I don't know why, but I just love it.
Yeah. Well, it's a great field. I mean, health coming from a very broad, actually very hospital-based or clinical medicine to dentistry is that it's not you're still working with patients. I wouldn't say it's not totally a different field, but it's or a different industry. It's the same industry, different field.
Yeah.
So I mean, that all sounds great. I mean, my goodness, so it sounds like to me you can still work with a lot of those industries right now, but do you still focus a lot of your training on healthcare companies, or do you work specifically with dentists right now?
I work specifically, 99% of my time I'm working with in dentistry, and that's my choice. I really could branch out into corporate or other industries. Been there, done that, and don't think I have no desire to go back. I actually recently have started branching out into veterinary. Because it's pretty interesting. I'm doing a lot of research and a lot of reading. Veterinary docs and dentists have extraordinary similarities when it comes to what stresses them out, their how they cope, their stress triggers, their settings. Veterinary works a lot in corporate, but yet they want to be owner doctors versus the private practice. Same thing in dentistry. So I've started working in veterinary just this year, but my love is still dentistry. I just which I have a high fear of the dentist. So I was never a kid that was like, yay, let's go to the dentist. My mom didn't even tell. I had such a fear. My mom would never tell me that we had to go to the dentist. She would lie to me, get me in the car, and then like pull into the parking lot, and then I would start throwing temper tantrums. But I don't have that so much anymore.
Well, you know what? We like you in dentistry, so
Thank you.
we hope you can stay in dentistry for a long time.
As long as you guys are needing information and stressing out, I'm going to be here for you guys.
Yeah, I don't see stress being out of the equation for a long time, unless they can find a way to automate dentistry to the point where you can probably do a crown prep while you're at a coffee shop.
Exactly. Unless you can start serving your patients remotely by robotics.
Yeah. Which is happening, by the way. It will happen, but I think if it's going to happen in fast food or in the auto industry, there's going to find a way to do it. They're already doing it in GI surgery, invasive surgery right now. They're using a lot of robotics there. So it's going to happen in dentistry. It's just a matter of when.
True.
Yeah.
The dentist will still need to build that relationship with patients.
Patients, yeah.
And that's one of the areas that I find that stress dentists out the most. It's dealing with difficult patients. I actually have I speak. I have a workshop titled, Working with Difficult Patients. And I'm doing a seminar, actually a full 2-day seminar on just how to really work with not just difficult patients, but difficult people, because that's one of the top 5 stress triggers that dentists claim.
Yeah.
So
do you, so I would love to get that information from you. So if you want to share the dates for that event when you're going to be doing the 2-day seminar on stress. Well, it's going to be stress management. Yeah. So after we're done with the podcast today, we're going to exchange some more information and get your upcoming events information so I can put that on our Facebook group.
Perfect.
So it would be nice if we can do something that could also be related to online training, because most of my training is done online. So that way, if you have something that you can post online as far as a webinar or seminars, let me know. I would love to make announcements for that for you.
Well, thank you. That's wonderful. I have a webinar every month. Okay. That's free. And then I have a 2-day seminar, September 30th and October 1st. And that's my kind of my basic stress management seminar, from functional to optimal. And I'll send you all that information, the links and everything.
Great. Thank you so much. Well, we've actually shared, I know I had a bunch of questions I wanted to ask you, but I like the way this is going right now. I like the spontaneity of a meeting too. There's questions that can always arise from, I always try to think of what would somebody who is looking to hire you for services, what kind of questions are they gonna ask you? So one question I have is, can you think of a specific example of how you were able to help out? Sorry about that. Okay, can you think of a specific example of how you were able to help out a dentist? I'll give you an extreme example. If you ever encountered a dentist or a dental office where the people were just about to call it quits, and everybody was getting stressed out, and the office was a mess, and you came in and you were able to help them out. So if you can share with us a specific example like that.
Well, that's interesting because you just identified my ideal client. I would say that I provide 3 core services through my company. One is stress management coaching, and that doctor would come to me where they just are totally stressed out. I call it the dreads. They dread Monday morning. Then they start dreading Sunday afternoon because that's right before Sunday morning. And then they dread a patient. And then they dread a team member walking in. And then they dread and dread and dread and dread. They dread going home. Yeah. So I call it the dreads. Yeah. And they just hate the way that they're living. They just keep saying life should not be like this. And they just don't know what to do. They've gone to CE courses and they've read some books, and they just don't know how to make the change. And so that's one client or one doc that would call us. And I have many clients that have called just because they're literally unhappy. And that's how they describe themselves. I'm just not happy. There has to be something better than this. Sure. And so through coaching, I have lots of testimonials at my website. I've had docs that have said that they are suicidal, that they are addicted to nitrous, that this is on a weekly basis.
And so they've admitted this to you.
Oh, yes. Wow. Oh, yeah. That they just truly are calling out for help. And one of the things that it happens more than you would think, that a lot of dentists are afraid or fearful or hesitant to go to their medical doctor for fear that it will, if they live in a small community or a small town, that it's going to get out, or that something is going to get back to the board and they'll lose their license, or something will happen with their insurance and their insurance will go up or something like that. And none of that is true, but that is a fear and hesitation. So they appreciate that they can talk to me and it's confidential. I'm board certified. I'm a master certified coach. I'm board certified coach. So I adhere to a lot of ethics and confidentiality. Sure. And they appreciate that I don't live in their community, and they can be completely transparent with me and honest with me. And so what's wonderful is I get to hear the stories of docs that in the beginning, where they say, I just don't think anything is going to work, to I can't believe how happy I am. I didn't know life could be like this. And I've got lots of docs that have said, you saved my life, but that's not true because the clients do all the work. I'm just a sounding board for them. So that's one ideal client. Another ideal client is, as you described.
It's funny how you're saying ideal client. I mean, it's those are not ideal situations, obviously. But I mean, what I think what you're trying to say is typical, right? It's a typical client, or why do you call them ideal clients?
Well, it's not ideal for them.
Yeah.
But my company, here's one of the things I'll answer that, but here's one of the things I find is I also do practice management consulting.
Okay.
So I go into, I offer either a blend of coaching and practice management consulting, or full service consulting, as most dentists would think, practice management consulting.
Sure.
And what I find is that those docs that don't have any money, they literally are on the brink of burnout, they're stressed, they get weeded out, or since they don't have the financial means, and they emotionally or mentally are much more maybe fragile or vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
a lot of other practice management consulting firms wouldn't take them on, or they wouldn't qualify for their finances.
Right.
I, however, have built a business model where those are the clients that I serve. I'm not looking to take a dentist who, I mean, I can, and I've done it before, but I'm not looking to take a dentist doing $2 million a year and who wants to go to $3 million. And who is mentally, physically healthy, and they just really want to grow their practice. That's great.
Yeah.
There's a lot of consultants.
And there's a need for that too.
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah. And there are people that serve those populations
very well. And I am friends with them, and I'm thrilled about them. The docs that I work the most with are docs that, again, are that emotionally, mentally fragile, that need some sort of cognitive behavioral therapy or stress management coaching, or some psychology threaded into it, where you have those emotional conversations, as well as a blend of their practices is on the brink of folding, or the doctor hasn't paid themselves in a year. And so I have a financial business model where I take less in the beginning and more at the end. Because I know that once I work with that doctor on the things that is holding them back personally within the practice will soar. Yeah. And I've got lots of stats behind me that within just a few weeks of working with me, and in my approach, because my approach is different than practice management consultants will say, let me reduce your stress. But the way in which they approach that is they work on your business, and as a consequence or as a result, some stress is reduced.
Yeah, but there could also be a lot of root causes of stress that's not being addressed.
Correct. And that's my different approach, is I address the person. The doctor is the epicenter, and I address their unique needs and then build the practice uniquely around them. And I have very sustainable long-term results that by 50, 60, 70% increase production and collections.
Yeah, that's awesome.
By doubling the practice numbers. Practice management isn't cookie cutter. There's not one approach that works. Yeah. So when I say ideal client, that's what I mean. It's not ideal for the doctor, but I really want on this podcast to differentiate myself from kind of the standard therapist or practice management consultant. Sure. Because we work with the doctor and secondarily the business.
Yeah. I'm sure you've met practice management consultants out there, and they're like, you know what, this is not for me, maybe for Jen Butler, but not for me. Correct.
Which I have them refer to me, not a lot. They try, and I think they do their best. Absolutely. Yeah. And I have a lot of friends that are consultants, and they do their best, but they call the doctor, the doctor's very needy, or they don't have the tools and resources to support the doctor with their personal issues, or they don't get the ideal results just because they're not the ideal client for them, because the doctor or even the team, as you said, the team being very stressed out, the team might have more of those needs that take precedent over than just changing the production or the hygiene department so the hygienists make more money, you know?
Sure. Yeah. Well, one of the reasons why I started this podcast series, and the name of the podcast series is Front Office Success, but it's actually, you can't really separate the front office from the back office. It's the entire team. The reason why I named it Front Office Success is because it starts there and it goes from the entire office through. Because the dentist is part of the front office and the back office, because the people that work in the front represent the dentist. So without having a good representation, without having good practice philosophy, or the vision of the practices, if that's not being displayed coming from the dentist, and the front office staff will have a very hard time displaying it.
Absolutely. And to even piggyback on what you're saying, which I believe 100%, where I find that team members often fall short of expectations is not because of their desire or their level of commitment. It also is if the dentist doesn't have clarity around who they are as a business owner, what they stand for, what kind of practice do they want to run, what kind of business do they want to own, and really getting almost internally what do they want patients leaving with? Answering that question, what do they want patients to leave with? Then it's hard for the entire team to know where to function unless the doctor has that kind of clarity. And that's where stress, strain, and tension will come in.
Sure.
When people I'm also a certified Colby consultant. I don't know if you're familiar with the Colby, but that's for a whole nother podcast. But
okay.
Most people have heard of the Wonderlic. It's been used for a long time in HR. Okay. The Colby is the next evolution of the Wonderlic. Anyway. Okay. So, but to put together teams, high-performing teams, it's got to start with the dentist, because they are the epicenter. They, as you said, they are the front, they are the back, they are the business. And so the doctor needs to be able to, I say, build the practice from the inside out, meaning literally from the inside of him or her to the outside, to the team, to the patients, to the documents, to the policies and procedures, and that type of thing.
And that's you bring up a very good point, building from the inside out. I think a lot of times people think that if they fix the outside, the inside will eventually get repaired too, but that doesn't happen.
That does not happen. And as a matter of fact, I wrote an article for Dental Town. I've got quite a few articles, so your listeners can go to my website and
Sure.
read some great information. But I wrote an article around the myths of stress management in dentistry. And that's actually one of the myths around stress management in general. What people forget is that stress is an internal biological and physiological chemical reaction inside of us. We think stress is out here. We think stress is external because we say that person stresses me out. Right. My practice is stressing me out. We point the finger at external things that quote unquote stress us out. So we then surmise that, well, if we fix these internal things, our stress will go away. And that is 100% not the case, like you said. Our stress response is a automatic process that we cannot control. However, we do have a lot of influence over, as long as we. Sorry, I had something come across my screen.
That's okay. So, you can start over if you want to.
Yeah. So we can't fix those external things because with our stress response being an internal automatic process, the only way to influence that internal automatic process is to go internal.
Right.
Now, that doesn't mean you need to lay on the couch and pour out, all your woes and everything. I'm definitely not suggesting that.
Yeah.
And I'm also not saying that's not a good thing for some people as well, but that's not necessary when it comes to stress management.
Right. But it's funny how actually we're getting close to the end of our program, so we'll probably wrap up here. But it's funny how you're talking about internal stress versus external stress, and you start off with internal, and then you try to work on the external stuff. But a lot of times people don't realize just a little bit of counseling or talking. You don't have to talk to a professional. You can talk to there's coaches. There's professional coaches like you, as well as there's people in their surrounding community, like a pastor or a friend, even just being able to get stuff out, not holding it, just holding it in for your entire life. I mean, there's marriage counselors out there. There's executive coaches out there. There's people out there that can help other people. But a lot of times, dentists like myself, we're just afraid to ask for help.
One of the things that I have found is that dentists are such fix-it people. I mean, first of all, you're doctors, right? You're doctors. And you're fix-it people.
Yeah.
So you think, that dentist brain thinks, I don't want to say you, but that dentist brain thinks I should be able to fix myself. My gosh, it's just stress, Yeah. I'm doing sinus lifts, and I'm doing surgicals, and I'm doing all of these I'm doing all these big procedures, and I went to all this school and residency.
Right.
I should be able to fix this.
Yeah.
I should be able to fix my level of happiness.
Right.
And that is not the case. It's called the theory of self-deception. And what that means is it's a psychological law that says that the brain cannot see outside of itself. So we cannot mirror back what we see, hear, feel. We need someone else, to your point, talk to somebody. We need someone else to mirror back what we're saying, how we're acting, what they see. So coaching, being board certified and master certified, coaching is a very next step level to where people have some apprehension about going and seeing maybe a counselor or a therapist, which counseling and therapy definitely is a modality for certain people. But where you'll find, especially in therapy, a good definition or a simple definition might be that therapy takes people that are dysfunctional and helps them become functional.
Functional, yeah.
Coaching, the coaching modality, takes people who are functional, go to work every day, make a living, but they take them to optimal. And that's what I focus on, from functional to optimal. Those feelings of joy and happiness, shed the dreads, where you just don't feel the weight of life every day. And 86% of dentists in the United States claim moderate to severe stress. 86%.
Wow.
And so all these dentists that are taking medical CE courses or firing their staff and then rehiring new staff or self-medicating, though 86% of your colleagues, your peers, when you go to your conferences or you talk to them on message boards, they have self-reporting stress levels that can quickly turn into burnout. And then can quickly turn into indifference, and then can quickly turn into depression and leading to suicide. I've just become aware of 3 suicides just in the last few weeks from dentists, and they were 2 of them were in their 30s and one was in their 40s.
Oh, wow.
And so I talk about things that don't necessarily, they're not feel good. And yet they're so important. They're so important in dentistry if we're going to make a significant change.
Yeah. But there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. I mean, there's always the other side. You can stay in a state of depression probably your entire life, but until you reach out and, make a phone call to people like you and, ask for help. I mean, or maybe it could be a family member or a staff member or an office manager who comes up to the dentist and says, hey, I think we need some help as a practice. We should be working as a better communicating team. We can do a lot better than we are right now. So I'm glad you actually brought up the difference between what a coach does and what a counselor or therapist does.
Well, thank you. I know we are getting short. One of the things I want to share with you just real quick, if I can,
Sure.
that I find to be pretty ironic is that when I'm in dental offices, and I talk to hundreds of doctors, I've worked with hundreds of doctors, and thousands of team members. And one of the things that they talk about is periodontal disease and how you show patients the evidence of periodontal disease. You assess by taking x-rays and you show them the bone loss, you do the full mouth probing with the measurements and the bleeding, and you go through all these steps to prove to them by using assessments that they have periodontal disease, and then you talk to them and educate them around the seriousness of the condition and what it could potentially lead to, especially with new research leading to cardiac arrest and heart disease and this type of thing. And we're finding out more and more information around the link between, right? So
the oral systemic link.
Right, the oral systemic. Yeah. But then I find it very ironic that when doctors take their, let's say, an online assessment that determines that they might have some level of depression, or they go and see their doctor and their doctor does an assessment and an evaluation that says they have some level of maybe diabetes or some level of unhappiness. Maybe some friends.
That's hard to diagnose.
Right? So it is. That's subjective.
Yeah.
However, we do have valid and reliable assessments that do ascertain one's level of depression. We can actually even draw blood to test people's cortisol and that type of thing. And yet, being the same thing as that patient, where that patient says, no, thank you, I don't want treatment, I find that doctors too display or dismiss the evaluations and assessments used to ascertain if they have some level of depression or some level of a cortisol, increase of cortisol or a serotonin dip. So I share that with you because there might be a little bit of an awakening just to compare that analogy with doctors. Sure. That sometimes doctors are similar to their patients, and the doctors can relate to their patients in some way, where if you don't like the diagnosis, we can always dismiss or disregard the evidence. It comes down to trusting the professional that you're talking to, right? And taking, so anyway, I leave that with you.
Well, thank you, Jen. I really appreciate you being on the program today. So a couple of things I wanted to take care of before we end the podcast today. Can you give us a little bit about how people can find out more information about you? So you said you had a webinar series?
I do have webinars. Okay. The next webinar is at the end of July.
End of July, okay.
Yep, the end of July.
You have a 2-day event coming up.
I do have a 2-day event coming up here in Phoenix, September 30th and October 1st.
Okay.
It's very inexpensive. Again, I'm all about let's get the information out.
Sure.
Let's potentially save some lives and help people live happier. So we keep our seminars at very low cost. Okay. And that's from functional to optimal, facing the realities of stress in dentistry and kicking its ass. If we can say that.
We can say it. That's fine.
Okay. And so that 2-day seminar is September 30th and October 1st. They can go to my website and get more information, which is jenbutlerpartners.com, or they can just email me at jen@jenbutlerpartners.com.
Great. Thank you so much for being on the program today.
Oh, thank you so much.
I really enjoyed the podcast interview today. So
I'd love to continue the conversation and do a series.
I'd love it. Yeah. Probably in a couple of months, if it's okay with you, I wanted to get a hold of you. And is there more you can talk about Colby? I know you said something about a different podcast, but is there relevant information you can share about that that could apply for dentistry?
Absolutely. I use the Colby in dentistry all the time.
All the time. Okay.
All the time.
Okay.
And
so that could be our next topic then.
Yeah. And it's so important to build. I say stop doing the eeny, meeny, miny, mo of hiring and actually utilize some science to build high performing teams.
Okay.
So that'd be great.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. And I'll be posting more information on our next podcast and also Jen Butler's contact information on our Facebook site. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you so much. I really
Okay.
appreciate it.
All right. So you can hit the record off button.
Okay.